An ear-piercing buzzer went off in my pocket, snapping me out of my thoughts. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and stepped outside the temporary medical facility. The midday sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of the rural town. My phone screen lit up, the name at the top sinking into my stomach like a stone. Richard. I almost didn't answer. After everything we'd been through, I thought we were done, but something told me to pick up. "Hello," I murmured. "Catherine." His voice was bright, far too cheery for the man who had once made every family event feel like walking on eggshells. "I heard you sold the mountain cabin." I gripped the phone tighter, stunned. "What?" He laughed. "Yeah, just found out. Can't believe you sold it. Greater good mine, right?" That name hit me like a punch. I hadn't said a word about the cabin being sold, not to him, not to anyone. And the audacity in his tone, like it was some shared joke, made my stomach turn. "Hi, I'm Catherine. And for as long as I can remember, Richard has been a storm I've had to navigate. He wasn't my father, but when Mum remarried when I was 15, he made himself very comfortable in our lives. Outwardly, he played the part of the funny stepdad. But underneath, there was always a current of manipulation. Someone who never missed a chance to put himself first. The cabin wasn't just a house. It was my refuge. Nestled in the mountains, it was where I recharged after long business trips, a place where I could breathe again. It wasn't just mine, though. It was co-owned with my best friend Laura. We'd agreed long ago, both signatures were needed for any sale. So how on earth did Richard think he had the right? "You didn't own that cabin," I told him, my voice shaking. "Oh, come on," he scoffed. "You were never even there. I just figured since you weren't using it." That's when I realised. He hadn't just guessed, he'd acted. Probably tried to sell it without permission, using some forged paperwork or convincing half-truths. "I'll thank you when freeze is over," he mumbled before abruptly ending the call. I stood frozen. The audacity. The betrayal. And yet, he had no idea. No clue that the sale wasn't even my idea to begin with. Laura and I had been discussing it for months, but nothing could go through without both our approvals. With my head spinning, I called Laura. "Hey, Kathy, what's going on?" she chirped. "I think Richard tried to sell the cabin. Said it was already done," I replied, trying to steady my voice. She was silent for a moment. "He has no authority. He'd need our signatures." "Gambling debts," I muttered. "That's why he did it. He thinks he can do whatever he wants." "He can't," she said firmly. "We'll get this straightened out." Her calm grounded me. Richard may have pushed boundaries before, but this time he crossed a line. And I wasn't the scared teenager who used to avoid confrontation. I was a grown woman now, with knowledge, support, and legal options, and I was ready to fight back. I finished my community work and tried to distract myself, but Richard's voice echoed in my mind like a ghost I couldn't shake. One night, I pulled out my old journal. Writing always helped me sort through chaos. As my pen moved across the pages, memories came rushing back. The first time Mum and I stayed in the cabin, the nights Laura and I spent curled up by the fireplace. It wasn't just a building, it was the one piece of stability I had after my mother died. And now, Richard thought he could treat it like a poker chip. The next day, Laura called again. "Kathy, I checked the records. He doesn't have the authority. He never got my signature." Relief flooded my chest, but anger quickly followed. Then how do we find out what he actually did? "I checked the county records," she said. "No official transfer. But he may have tried something under the radar. You know how he is, always trying to game the system." "What do we do now?" I asked. "We either confront him or let the legal system handle it," she replied. "Either way, he has no legal standing." I let out a breath I didn't realise I was holding. "Thank you, Laura. I couldn't do this without you." "You would have figured it out," she said gently. "But we're in this together." As we hung up, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to yell or throw accusations. That's what Richard expected. No, this time I would be calm, precise, and powerful. He didn't know I had already won the moment he assumed I'd stay silent. When I finally returned to the cabin, everything felt different. What used to be a peaceful escape now felt unnervingly quiet. The stillness wasn't comforting, it was eerie. The air smelled stale. My plants drooped, thirsty from neglect, and unopened mail littered the doorway. I placed my bag down with a long sigh, surveying the space I once called home. As I unpacked, my phone rang again. Richard. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. Let it go to voicemail. But then, I decided it was time to face him. "Not my globe-trotting stepdaughter," he greeted me, that mocking cheerfulness still clinging to his voice. "Back already?" "What do you want, Richard?" I asked flatly. "Just checking in," he replied with a smug tone. "I hope you're not too worked up about the whole cabin thing. It's over. No use losing sleep over it." I took a slow breath. That's funny, because according to the property records, the sale didn't go through. Laura and I both had to sign off, remember? And she didn't. He went silent. Long enough for me to know I'd struck a nerve. "The buyer paid," he finally muttered. "Cash. We did the paperwork. It's done." "No, it isn't," I said calmly. "Unless Laura signed, and she didn't, the sale is void. Under the law, it's still ours." His fake charm cracked, just a little. "You always think you're so smart, always the perfect daughter, always trying to control everything. You think I haven't had it rough?" I clenched my jaw. "Richard," I said, "you took what wasn't yours, and now you're going to deal with the consequences." He hung up without another word. I stood there, staring at the dead phone screen, a mixture of rage and triumph swirling inside me. For years, Richard had relied on guilt, manipulation, and half-truths to get his way. But not anymore. I wasn't just protecting a cabin. I was reclaiming my boundaries. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, reviewing every document Laura and I had signed over the years. Her co-ownership was airtight. Nothing could happen without both of us. The people Richard tried to involve, whoever they were, had either been duped or complicit. Either way, he was in deep. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Richard. He wore his usual smug look, but something behind his eyes had shifted. He looked uncertain. "Mind if I come in?" he asked, stepping in before I could answer. I didn't move. I folded my arms and watched him pick a chair, making himself comfortable. "I get that you're upset," he began, "but put yourself in my shoes. I owed people money. Serious people. This wasn't some game. I was just trying to fix things." I stayed quiet. His voice got louder. "I was going to pay you back. Once I got back on my feet, we could have come back to the cabin together. It was just a temporary thing." "You gambled away your own money, not mine," I replied coldly. "You don't get to make decisions about something that doesn't belong to you." "It's just a cabin," he scoffed. "You're never even here," I snapped. "That doesn't mean it isn't mine." He froze. "You don't get to decide what matters to me, or how I live my life. And by the way, Laura cares just as much. You can try to sell it to someone else, but it won't hold up." His face darkened. For a split second, I saw something flicker in his expression. Fear. "You're not really going to call the cops," he said, voice quieter now. I stepped forward, meeting his eyes. "Watch me." For the first time, Richard looked unsure of himself. He stood abruptly, muttered something under his breath, and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I stood motionless for a long while. My hands were shaking, but in my chest something had lifted. A weight, a decades-old silence had finally cracked open. Richard was realizing his usual tactics wouldn't work. Not anymore. That evening I called out Laura to give her the update. He tried to guilt me, I said. Told me it was for survival, for people he owed money to. Laura snorted. He actually said that, out loud, with a straight face. He really thinks this is a movie, huh? I smiled faintly. I told him the sale was void, and if he keeps pushing, I'll go to the authorities. Laura's tone turned serious. Good. Let him try something. I already called a lawyer. We're drafting a cease and desist letter. If he contacts the buyer again or tries anything else, we'll file. Her words steadied me. I don't know what I'd do without you. You're not alone, she replied. We're just getting started. Over the next few days, I began gathering every shred of evidence, emails, messages, property records. I printed copies, highlighted dates, even found the real estate agent Richard had used. When I called her, she sounded nervous. He told me he had full authority, she explained. Said you were out of the picture. You didn't know it was co-owned? No idea. I never would have gone through with it if I'd known. I reassured her I wasn't after her. I just needed the paperwork. She agreed to send everything. That night, Laura called again. Good news, she said. The letter's ready. We'll send it out first thing tomorrow. If he pulls another stunt, we're ready to escalate. A smile tugged at the corner of my lips. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control again. Richard thought he could bulldoze his way through this, like always. But not this time. We were ready. The next morning, Laura and I finalised the cease and desist letter. We reviewed it carefully. Every sentence clear, firm and unshakable. Then we sent it to Richard. The message was simple. Any further attempts to claim ownership of the cabin or to engage the buyer would result in legal action. I could only imagine his reaction: rage, confusion, disbelief. For years, Richard had leaned on manipulation to get what he wanted, but this time, he'd run headfirst into a wall he couldn't bluff his way through. That afternoon, the real estate agent emailed me the documents she had promised. I stared at Richard's signature on the fake sale agreement. My stomach turned. Seeing it there, in black ink, made everything real. He hadn't just crossed a line, he had erased it entirely. Later that evening, I received a call from Detective Miller, a local officer Laura had contacted. Miss Daniels, he began, his tone calm and professional. I've reviewed the documents you and Miss Langley provided. Based on what I've seen, the attempted sale wasn't authorised. With your consent, we're ready to move forward with an investigation. Yes, I answered, my voice steady. Good. First, we'll speak with the buyer and inform them of the situation. If Richard continues to interfere, we'll proceed with criminal charges for attempted fraud and misrepresentation. Thank you, I said. Let me know if you need anything else from me. After the call, I sat still for a long moment, feeling a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Things were finally in motion. The cabin, the place where I had healed, dreamed, and found peace, might still be mine. And Richard? He would finally be held accountable. The next day, Richard called again. His tone was different this time. There was still a hint of anger, but underneath it, something else, something brittle. I get why you're doing this, he said. I really do, but you're tearing the family apart, Catherine. I took a deep breath. No, Richard, I'm protecting what's mine. You always act like you're the victim, he shot back, like everyone else is just out to get you. No, I said gently. You did this, and now I'm setting a boundary. He fell silent, then muttered something about my mother. She wouldn't have let this happen. You think you're honouring her, but this would have broken her. I almost laughed, bitterly. Richard, you used her memory to justify your behaviour for years. You lied, you manipulated, and now you're upset I'm not falling for it. He tried again to twist things, but I cut him off. I'm done explaining. From now on, you can speak to my attorney. I hung up. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt free. 2 days later, Detective Miller called again. "Miss Daniels, I have good news. We spoke to the buyer. They were unaware of the co-ownership agreement and have agreed to back out of the deal." Wait, really? I could barely believe it. Yes, the paperwork was never finalised, and they've agreed not to pursue it further. That means the sale is officially void. The cabin remains yours and Miss Langley's. My eyes welled with tears. Thank you, Detective. Truly. There's still an open case regarding your stepfather's actions. Are you interested in pressing charges for attempted fraud? I hesitated, but only for a moment. Yes, I said. I want him held accountable. Understood. We'll move forward. After the call, I sat quietly, soaking in the moment. It had been so long since I'd felt peace. Richard had always loomed over my life like a storm cloud. But now, it was finally breaking. That afternoon, I called Laura. "The buyer pulled out," I told her. "The cabin's officially ours again." She cheered. "That's a huge win." "It is, but Richard's still being investigated." Good. Someone finally stood up to him. Her words echoed in my mind long after we ended the call. For so many years, I'd let Richard shape how I saw myself. Weak, uncertain, too emotional, but not anymore. This wasn't just about the cabin. This was about reclaiming my strength. A few days later, I made the drive back up to the mountains. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and damp earth. As I stepped through the front door, memories swelled around me. The warmth of the fireplace, the soft creak of the floorboards, the quiet moments spent wrapped in a blanket, listening to the wind. This place was mine. A week later, Detective Miller called again with an update. "Miss Daniels, I wanted to let you know we've officially filed charges. Your stepfather will be appearing in court for attempted fraudulent sale and unauthorised use of property documents." The words hit me with unexpected force. "Thank you," I whispered. For the first time, Richard would be forced to face the consequences of his choices. No more half-truths. No more dodging accountability. Later that day, Laura joined me at the cabin. She brought a bottle of champagne, and we sat together on the balcony, the mountains stretching out before us. "To the earth," she said, raising her glass, "and to not letting anyone manipulate us ever again." We clinked glasses, smiling. In the days that followed, I spent my weekends repairing the cabin. We painted the porch, planted wildflowers, and patched the roof. With every brushstroke, it felt like I was rebuilding not just a home, but a piece of myself. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and cast long golden rays across the porch, Laura turned to me. "So, Kathy, what now?" I paused, thinking. "I keep going, I travel, I help others, I live on my own terms, no one else gets to write my story." She raised her glass again. "I love it." As time went on, I found myself reflecting more deeply on everything that had happened. The experience with Richard wasn't just about property or paperwork. It had become a mirror, showing me how much I'd grown. I used to be the kind of person who avoided confrontation. I'd tiptoe around conflict, especially with family. But something changed this time. When it mattered most, I stood my ground. I wasn't scared of Richard anymore, and that felt like a quiet, powerful kind of freedom. The cabin, once just a retreat, had become a symbol of that strength. One night, Laura and I were sitting by the fire, watching the flames crackle in the hearth. The golden glow danced across the walls, warming the room as the wind whispered outside. "You know," she said softly, "from the beginning, this cabin was never just about real estate to me. It's about what we built, what we protected. It's a piece of our history." I nodded, emotion rising in my chest. "It's where I learned how strong I really am." She smiled. "Exactly." That night, curled beneath a quilt, I felt a peace that had eluded me for years. Richard's betrayal had tested me, but in a strange, unexpected way, it had also revealed my resilience. I realised I wasn't someone who needed to be rescued. I had rescued myself. In the weeks that followed, I gradually settled into a new rhythm. The cabin, once a place tied to old memories, became something new. With each creak of the wooden floor, each morning fog that rolled over the mountains, I remembered why I had loved it in the first place. Not for its structure, but for what it represented: solitude, clarity, and self-worth. Richard, on the other hand, went quiet. After the charges were filed, he didn't try to contact me again. Not directly. But my mother did. She called one afternoon, her voice hesitant. "Catherine," she began, "I just wanted to check in. I heard about everything." There was a pause. "Are you angry with me?" I sighed. "I'm not angry, Mum. I need space from all of it. From him. From the excuses." She went quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "I was scared you'd see the truth about him." I already did. For once, she didn't defend him. No accusations, no guilt, just silence. "I hope you find peace, Yao," she said finally. "I already have," I answered. After that, I focused on rebuilding the cabin and, in many ways, rebuilding myself. Laura and I spent our weekends fixing up the porch, repainting the front door, planting wildflowers around the steps. With every nail hammered and every stroke of paint, it felt like I was reclaiming something I hadn't even realised I'd lost. One evening, we were sitting on the veranda, watching the sky turn lavender and gold. "So," Laura asked, "what's next for you, now that you've reclaimed the cabin and sent Richard packing?" I laughed softly. "You know what? I'm going to keep doing what I've always loved. Travelling, volunteering, writing, living life by my own rules." She raised her glass of iced tea and smiled. "To living free." And I meant it. As the summer rolled on, I found myself spending more time at the cabin than I had in years. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The mountains didn't feel like a place I escaped to. They felt like home. I took long walks in the woods, journaled by the fire, cooked simple meals with herbs from the garden we'd started. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly in control, not just of my property, but of my life. And I knew then this wasn't just about standing up to Richard. This was about recognizing the power of boundaries, about knowing where I end and someone else begins. For years, I'd let guilt shape my choices. I told myself that keeping the peace was more important than speaking my truth. But not anymore. The cabin became my anchor, not because of the land or the structure, but because of what it symbolized. My strength, my values, my peace, and I wouldn't give that up for anyone. Weeks later, I received one final update from Detective Miller. "Miss Daniels," he said over the phone, "I wanted to inform you that your stepfather has officially been charged with attempted fraud and misrepresentation. We've gathered strong evidence, and a court date has been set." I thanked him, though the truth was, I no longer needed the outcome to feel complete. I had already found my closure. That night, I stood on the cabin porch as the sun dipped below the tree line, casting the sky in hues of pink and orange. The scent of pine and earth filled the air. A breeze rustled the leaves, and I breathed deeply. This was my place. Not just the cabin, but this feeling, this peace I had earned. No one gave it to me. I fought for it. I rebuilt it, nail by nail, truth by truth, and now it was mine to keep. In life, there often comes a moment when we're forced to choose between preserving peace and protecting ourselves. For Catherine, that moment came when someone she once trusted crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. Her story isn't just about property. It's about reclaiming self-worth after years of quiet tolerance. Too many of us have been taught to avoid conflict at the cost of our own well-being. to keep the family peace, even when it means sacrificing our voice. But as Catherine shows us, setting boundaries isn't an act of rebellion, it's an act of self-respect. When she finally stood her ground, she didn't just stop Richard from taking the cabin. She reclaimed the part of herself that had long been overshadowed by guilt, obligation, and emotional manipulation. This story is a powerful reminder that healing often begins the moment we say, enough. It's never too late to protect your peace, stand firm in your truth, and create a life that honours your values. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you once considered family? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And if this message resonated with you, please like the video and subscribe for more powerful journeys like this one.